Shout out to Jane Austen for always naming the most beautiful, sophisticated character after herself. Good afternoon, everyone. It is trouser weather for the first time this fall season, so I'm so excited. As you can see with my sweater that I got makeup on today, literally in the center. I'm heartbroken. It's literally like a shot to the heart. I'm actually so mad about it, but I think I kind of fixed it. Like, you can't really tell. Anyway, devastating. Let's get on with it. Today is going to be a book review. I just finished this one for the first time. This is Emma by Jane Austen, and I have a lot of loaded thoughts. Huge fan of this book, and truly wish there were more authors like her, especially in today's day and age. Let's get right into it. There is so much that I love about this book, but let's start at the beginning with Emma's character development. She is hell-bent on helping Harriet level up in life. Her main thing with this is she's going to coach Harriet into having all of the good graces that a charmed, upscale upbringing would give a young woman. All the good graces, how to act, how to be refined, and all of that. What she completely fails to realize is becoming an upstanding young woman has absolutely nothing to do with the external good graces, good manners, the things that people would market to you as etiquette. That is not truly what makes a great woman. We see a really great example of this later on in the book when we meet Mrs. Elton. She has all the education, all of the quote-unquote good graces of a woman who is technically really revered in society, but she is insufferable the entire time. She is not nearly as pleasant to be around as Harriet is, even though Harriet didn't have any of that privileged upbringing. Emma actually thinks of Mr. Elton as a prime candidate for Harriet's husband, and Mr. Elton just kind of, dismisses her and slights her because she is not from that higher social standing as far as upbringing goes. And I love how Emma, she actually thinks Harriet's too good for Mr. Elton when he does this, because she's mortified that he thinks of her as beneath him. And and it's really driven home when she meets Mrs. Elton, the woman that he chooses, because we all know people often choose a reflection of themselves in their spouse. And we see how insufferable Mrs. Elton is, and all she does is talk about herself, and she just always has to be the center of attention. There's no substance to her. She is looking for that hierarchy. People with no substance look for a hierarchy because that's all that they have to live for, basically. And that's why it's so important not only to have substance, but to really stand on your own 2 feet and not be too concerned with what everyone else thinks of you. And Harriet is not exactly a deep thinker either. She tends to just go with whatever Emma's saying or doing. She's just kind of taken by the winds in whatever direction the circumstance is taking her. But she's got some good values. She's very humble. She doesn't, go out of her way to make a spectacle of herself the way Mrs. Elton and, quite frankly, Emma also does. Anytime Emma asks Harriet about her opinion about anything, she can do very little more than just echo whatever Emma says back to her. And from this, Emma is a little bit confused because she kind of just assumes that everyone is just like her, which, guilty, actually. This is kind of the main issue that Emma has, right? Like, she thinks everyone is just like her. So she thinks everyone is going to want what she wants, which is to improve herself to the best of her ability, to be honest with herself, to always be self-reflective, and to take it upon herself to make sure everyone is taken care of. And that's why she's doing all this matchmaking. She thinks she's making the world a better place. This lesson that Emma learns about just leaving everyone the hell alone is something that I took a while to figure out for myself also, because some people don't want to improve themselves. Like, they don't want to go out of their way to make themselves uncomfortable, to go out of their comfort zone, to disrupt the current homeostasis of their life in the name of something bigger and better, which it's not bigger and better, it's just different. People are all the same, they're just built differently. So some people really, really like to improve themselves in ways that I wouldn't say improve. Improve is kind of a tricky word to use because it implies that what's coming next is better than what is currently there. But it's not improved, it's just different. And in many ways, some people will classify the new as better than the old, which if you're the one doing the changing, to you it is going to be better than where you are right now. That's why you're doing the changing. But some people are just happy the way they are. And for people like that, people like Harriet, going through that process of changing into something else that you don't even know what you're going to change into. That's the thing about self-improvement that a lot of people don't really understand at first, is you are leaving your old self behind in the name of a newer version of yourself that you haven't met yet, and killing the old version of yourself to step into an unknown new version of yourself is terrifying. Not only is it terrifying, it's really, really hard. Like, even if you want to change yourself into something else, it's a hard process to go through mentally, emotionally. And for Harriet to not be the one initiating this, Emma is the one taking Harriet and pushing her into this process by putting her into situations that would facilitate Harriet changing into what Emma thinks is a better version of Harriet, but it's all dependent on the person who is being changed. So for Harriet, that might not be better, and it isn't better, and it causes so much chaos and confusion, not just in Harriet's life, but in everyone else's life, because Harriet really needs to be the one taking the reins. If Harriet had wanted this, then Emma would have been the perfect friend for her, but she doesn't. And for Emma to put this very painful, emotional process onto someone who doesn't want it to begin with is a really bad thing to do. And then we have Jane Fairfax, this beautiful, talented, sophisticated young woman. Everyone always talks about how beautiful and talented she is. Which, by the way, shout out to Jane Austen for always naming the most beautiful, sophisticated character after herself. Can't say I wouldn't do the same. Much respect to you, Jane Austen. But anyway, so she is someone who really would share Emma's mindset, and we discovered this towards the end of the book when Emma finally does pursue a friendship with Jane Fairfax, an honest friendship. She starts to realize that Jane shares her mindset in so many ways that Harriet didn't, and instead of pursuing a friendship with someone who was personality-wise on the same wavelength, she was jealous of that person and chose instead to pursue a friendship with someone who she perceived was less than her, so that she could improve this person into a way of life that she thought was superior even though it wasn't to begin with. And basically her entire friendship with Harriet is just so that she can feel better about herself. Because she's thinking, I am doing this person a favor. And, every time she talks to Harriet, like, it's not really a two-way thing. Like, Harriet just keeps echoing whatever she says, and she doesn't stick up for herself. And Emma is trying to get her to kind of stick up for herself, and she really struggles with doing so. She does get a little bit more of a backbone towards the end, where she's not cowering before, people who she maybe had embarrassing encounters with in the past, but that's still like such a minor improvement. And that's the thing, she wouldn't have needed to stick up for herself if Emma hadn't forced her into these situations. Like, the life that Harriet is supposed to lead, just based on her preferences, is a life where she doesn't have to stick up for herself. She doesn't have to be put in these situations of ridicule, because she is not the type of person to get out there and ruffle the feathers of everyone in the vicinity. Like, she's more of a chill, laid back, let me just sit back and enjoy the ride kind of person, as opposed to let me get out there and start some fires here type of person. Which let me be honest with you, I'm an Emma Woodhouse. Like, I start fires everywhere I go. It's not even if I don't want to, even if I just want a nice tame situation, I'm just not that kind of person. I'm a fireworks kind of gal. Not everyone is like that, and fireworks girls need to kind of pump the brakes a little bit. But we can see here how there is no right or wrong way to live your life. There's no correct way to be. You can be a Harriet, you can be an Emma, but those different paths are going to require different skills, right? If you're someone like Emma or someone like Jane Fairfax, you're going to need a backbone. You're going to need to be there standing up for yourself and saying, hey, this is not going to fly. And Jane does this, which is what really shows Emma that Jane is actually someone who is more compatible with her as a friend, when she was basically calling off the secret wedding to Frank Churchill because of how Frank was acting, which was very inappropriately. Even Emma was fully on board with that when she found out what was really happening. People like Harriet, who live a little bit more passively, they are going to have a separate set of skills and battles that they have to fight. And there's nothing wrong with being a Harriet. There's nothing wrong with being an Emma. But the challenges are going to be different. And you cannot force one to be or adapt ways of the other. It's just not going to work, and it's just going to make everybody miserable. And I think when we take a look at the beginning of the book, Harriet is a lot better at being Harriet than Emma is at being Emma, because Harriet is really the best version of herself already at the beginning of the book. She is humble, she is nice, she is, not doing any damage to anybody. And Emma, on the other hand, is just chaos in a bottle, basically. But I do love how Emma has good intentions all the way through. She's not just blind destruction the way that Mrs. Elton is. I mean, Mrs. Elton isn't that terribly destructive, but you know what? Maybe she is. Now that I'm thinking about the Box Hill party, and towards the end, she's talking about, oh, we should all go to Box Hill again. Like, yeah, that place where literally every single person was miserable. You want to do that again? And she keeps talking about how it has to be the exact same people. Like, oh my goodness. And I don't know. But all of it, this is all fake people from hundreds of years ago. And these people are alive today. Like, you can see Harriet's walking around in today's day and age. You can see Emma's, you can see Jane's, you can see Mrs. Elton's. This is, it's completely relatable. And I don't know, I think that's beautiful. I think it's a very well written piece, and quite frankly, it really makes you think about why the books of today aren't nearly as profound. How have we not improved upon something like this? But that's, I suppose, a video for another time. Okay, now for the actual, like, love interest part of the book. First of all, I really did think Frank was gonna be the love interest for Emma for a really long time. I am not the type of reader that goes out of my way to try to solve the mystery of the book. Like, I become very passive. I become a Harriet, if you will, and I just let the novel take me wherever the author wants me to go. But when I tell you, I was shocked that it was going to be Mr. Knightley. Like, their chemistry was very... until the very end, where he's talking about, if I loved you less, I'd be able to talk about it more. I can't give speeches. And then he proceeds to give, like, a really good speech. That's really the only part where I'm like, wow, that is what I came here for. Because I was coming here for a romance. And I ended with a slap in the face about lessons that I've learned throughout my life. But I just thought, like, in Pride and Prejudice, the chemistry between Elizabeth and Darcy, it was there, right? It was there from the beginning, if it wasn't just, like, pure hatred at the beginning at first. But there was nothing but just, he was like a teacher almost. And I didn't like that. And I really didn't like the end where he said, oh, like, I've loved you since you were 13. Like, whoa, why is that? Like, can you pump the brakes there a little? Like, how much older is he? Like, I don't know. I mean, I get it, but, like, that could have been done better. Jane and Frank's behavior was despicable, and I really respect that Jane Fairfax called him out on it, and then he came forward and not only apologized, but talked about how horrendous he was being, and, didn't sit there and make any stupid excuses. But I mean, that's kind of bare minimum. Like, I know in the novels that we see today, like, where the relationship between the two main characters is just downright unfounded and toxic. This is obviously, like, worlds ahead of that. But for a Jane Austen novel, I feel like that's pretty standard stuff. But I was glad that was executed very well. Other than that, that's pretty much all I have to say. Great book. Will I reread it? Probably would reach for Pride and Prejudice before this one. But yeah, and I do love the back quote. I always deserve the best treatment because I never put up with any other. And I will say, if you are a Harriet who would like to improve, that is the mantra that you need to live by. Just, if you wanted to improve. Just always stand by, find something to believe in and just stand by it. That's really the only thing you need to do. That's the difference between living passively and living actively. And, if you've been living actively and you've been standing by something that you realize deep down you don't even really care about that much, and you would like to be more passive, just let it go. Just let it go. You are entitled to living exactly the way you want to, as long as you're not being destructive to others. You do not have to sit here and have an opinion on every single thing that's going on, have a thesis written about every single topic in this world. Don't feel like you need to. do what resonates with you.